everybody, check it out. This here is the Testors 1/48 scale SR-71 Blackbird. These are all the parts right here. They all come in black. Be careful, we don't want to lose anything. There are a couple of parts trees that go to this. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 sprue trees. Of course, I know I don't have to tell you this anymore because I do it enough. Wash your parts first. Here are the instructions for this. These are actually pretty detailed instructions. It even has on the back a bunch of pictures that tells you look at a bunch of reference photos before starting. This is basically a model that seems like it was put together for the experienced modeler. I hope when by the time it's said and done, they did a real good job on this. The instructions call for a bunch of various paints. It even tells you how to mix up paint just to get the right color for the inside of the wheel wells. This model can be done in a bunch of configurations. One of those being the SR-71A, is which everyone sees, and then the SR-71B, which is a two-seat version, I believe, with a hump. It tells you if you want to modify this model, you should be an experienced modeler before you try it, otherwise you might mess it up. These are the decals. These are made by Microscale, so this model looks like it's supposed to be a good model. I can't wait to do it, and we are going to go wash some parts because that's the first thing I always do, and that's the first thing it tells you to do in the instructions, especially before painting. Alright, we've got our warm water here. We are throwing in all of our parts. There were a couple of sprue trees, as I said earlier. Just get those in there, mix them around. We're going to let them soak for about 15 minutes. Afterwards, pull that drain plug. We're going to rinse off all the residue from these parts. Watch it go down the drain. Make sure nothing falls off. I noticed on this that some of the parts were a little bit loose on these sprues. So just get all that soap and all that nasty oily water off of there. We're going to get it off, and then afterwards we're going to let these parts go out to dry. So right here we're washing a bunch of the back pieces and a top piece of the fuselage. This is the back half of the model right here. Here will be the other wing sides and some tail pieces that we're not going to use. The what do you call those? The engine exhaust, and this piece fell off of the sprue. That's also one of the back pieces, the middle of the fuselage right here. So these are all done. As I said earlier, just set them out to dry, and don't forget your loose little pieces like we have here, and wash your canopies. So what I'm doing here, I'm painting the inside of this. This is the cockpit. It's a little blurry, I know, but this is going silver. So paint around there and there. On the back side, you don't have to go all the way up like I did, because most of that will actually get covered by a separate piece. So if you want, you can find that piece and stick it on top just to see how it goes. We are getting around all this right here as well. That way you can see how that goes. That was a gray color. This is the instrument panel. Those all go gray as well. You could see one of the other pieces right there. So paint both of these instrument panels gray. And after we do that, we will scratch in, as I like to call it, our little bit of black on there. So this right here is one of the chairs for the cockpit. We have 2 of these that we have to do, one for each side, front and back. Here it is, the close-up shot of that. Make sure you get it good. Get both sides of it, as we're doing here. This piece right here is the main cockpit itself. Paint the instrument panels on here. You can actually see these fairly well through the canopy if you just look inside of there. So we just continue to paint this, give it a couple of coats. You want it to look pretty, of course, because it is the instrument panel. Get the bottom like I'm doing right here. It's not too hard to do, just a couple of spaces. Steer clear of these little indentations you see there, because you're just going to rest the seats on those little indentations. Here we go. We're also doing the sides of this because, as I said, you can see in through those canopies very easily for this cockpit, which is, it's a plus. This is the second coat that I'm putting on the instrument panel. That way it looks nice and pretty. It doesn't look bad. Here we are, one more coat on the cockpit, all around all those instruments. Here are the bulkheads. We're going to paint those a dark gull gray as well. There are 2 of these, one for the front and one for the back. They have a little spot on them so you can put the actuators that raise the canopies up and down if you choose to do so. Here is the instrument panel. I'm doing like I like to do, which is scratch in, as I call it, the instruments on there. You just get a little bit of black paint on your brush. You dab a lot of the excess off and just slowly go over it. That way you don't get any on the rest of the model. It's a skilled technique and it's learned. It doesn't take too long to figure it out, but you get it done. These got radars in them that you're going to have to paint a little bit of a green color later on. So just slowly go over the rest of these and we will get these instrument panels done. Here is the other bit of this right here. Make sure you get all of it. Slowly break these away from their sprues as we're doing here. Get all that flashing off, all these pieces right here, front and back. Notice I didn't paint the back of the bulkheads because it's not necessary to do that. It's only each side gets seen in the aircraft. So cut out the cockpit from the sprues. We are going to paint some Dark Gull Gray around the inside. Wasn't too easy to see this, but you can just a little bit on those outside edges and then going down into the cockpit when those canopies are in the up position. So go all around this. I'll put 2 coats on there as well. Here we're going to do the instrument panel on all of the cockpit itself. There's a bunch of little dials on there that we have to get. I wasn't too concerned with how this looked because it's on the inside and you know buttons get pressed all the time, so I wanted them to look kind of worn out and like paint was worn because you know they are SR-71s. They fly at high altitudes. They get pretty hot inside of there. You can melt a sandwich on the windshields, as they said. So here we go, just slowly going around this. We are going to paint a little bit more. Here I am as a close-up, that way you can see how this is done. You just lightly go over it, and slowly but surely, that black comes off with a brush, and it gets onto your dials and your instruments, and it makes them look pretty, and it leaves the background a nice dark gull gray color. Here we go, finishing that up. This right here, we're putting a little bit of touch-up silver paint. This will go on top of the plane, and that will hold one of the rear canopies, and we'll put that on later. So just finishing this up here made that look a little bit rough, and I was happy with how that turned out. We are going to go over one more coat that I showed you along the outside edge, which is right here. And as I said earlier, there is no need to paint that far out because it basically... it doesn't get seen from that one piece I painted earlier. That goes right on top of that. Here we are finishing that up. We did both the front and the backs of this, and this is how I did mine. Got a little bit of gray and a little bit of that color on the outside of the jet, but not a big deal for me because I still painted the plane black anyway. So we keep going over this. This is the front, as I said earlier. I don't remember if it actually goes a steel or a silver color. You'd have to look at the directions for that and just make sure you do it right. Here I am painting the front of this nose piece right here. That also gets a canopy to it, the front windshield. We are going to break this off of the sprues. We got one here, and then there is one over here that we take care of. Break off this piece. This goes on top of that, like I showed you right here. There's a little test fit. And this is what it'll look like. Scrape away that paint, as I said, because you may want to make sure you can glue this piece down. Have glue on that top section, and then right there where the cockpit will sit down. Just get all that glue scraped off of there, and we'll just rest this piece right on top. So we put our glue in these little cracks. One on this side, one on the other side. Put some glue right here. And then glue on the other side, and we will put this piece in place. Don't put too much glue on because it will come through the cracks, and then I'll give you a little bit of sanding to do. So there it is, and you'll see there's a hole that we will also have to put one of these clear pieces. It gets painted silver, so when you put it in, you're also going to have to mask around that when it comes time to painting the model. Or you can do it in reverse, put it in, mask it off, then paint it silver later. Either way, it was still a little bit of a chore to do. We're going to break this piece off. Be careful because it will go flying everywhere. You see 2 pieces there. One of those is if you decide to do the SR-71B. We got flashing in here that has to be taken out. It's on that side because this piece fits in a certain way. It's got registration marks. There's the front side, and this is the back, showing you that how you once you twist it, you have a slot there on the right side and a slot on the left. I'm just using a toothpick to put some glue in there. That way it holds it in place, and I don't want to do too much because remember, this glue can make plastic parts frost. There we go. We've got that taken care of. Just a little bit of glue to make sure this doesn't go anywhere. And here it is from the top side. Looks good, if I would say so myself. So we're now getting ready to do the main inside of the whole cockpit. Put some glue there. We're going to put our instrument panel in. The front and the back only go in a certain way. After we get those in, we'll put our bulkheads in as well. So this right here is where one of the bulkheads is going to go. So make sure you put everything correctly. That's one of the bulkheads. Just fit that in place, hold it down, make sure the glue sets. Here we are right here. This is going to be an instrument panel. As I said, you'll see a bulkhead, then an instrument panel. That way you don't have to paint the back of the bulkhead, so you know this is what it looks like. This is the rear of the plane, and that's that instrument panel. Now we're going to the other part of the rear, and we're going to put the bulkhead in place. So be careful with your glue, that way you don't get it all over the place. You see that notch? That's for the actuator, again, as I mentioned earlier. And there's a better shot of this, how it sits in place in there. So we're going to put a little bit of glue on this side and a little bit of glue on the other side, that way it doesn't move. This is the green I was talking about for the radar screens. Goes one on each of these radars. Make sure you get them good. Doesn't have to look perfect because it is on the inside of the plane. Let's take our chairs now off of the sprue. That way we can start assembling these. The chairs have several different colors that they go. They can only go one way as well because they also have registration marks. It's basically a notch that fits into the other notches. It's a circle and then a divot that's filled in there. And these things fit perfectly. Make sure you do a little bit of scraping from when they were formed, because it did leave some spots that didn't make it easy. Just press the chair in and it should hold. Once that glue dries, you can paint these. The seat, according to the instruction, goes green. At the time this model came out, no one was really allowed in the cockpit, so they kind of just had to go by descriptions of what they were told and how they would look. So here we are painting that a nice little green color. Do both seats. Of course, when you do this, you don't want to forget that. The headrest is going to go red. So we will paint that as well. Make sure you leave room and enough paint there. That way you don't cover all of it, so you can also put in the ejection handle. Here's that red I was talking about. I think I used insignia red. I really didn't care what red it went. It's just a cockpit. It looks fine for me, however it looks done. I did not bother to fill in the gaps as you see there either. I just didn't feel like spending the time to do that. These were the only things I didn't paint black. I just figured they were already black. It's going inside. No one's going to notice. So I just used a toothpick, put some little stripes on there, because that's the only way I know how to do stripes. If you know a better way to do stripes, feel free to let me know. I'm all ears. That way I can make stripes look a little bit better on my plane. So these are the ejection handles. We're almost done with those. We'll let that yellow paint dry a little bit because we don't want to break them off. I'm using just a file to hold those down. That way they didn't go flying everywhere. Get your tweezers, put some glue in there, press down carefully, and make sure those stay in place just like we've done here. There are two of those, of course, so make sure you do both of them. Here's the other one, again using the tweezers and just slowly pressing it down. And we can put these seats inside of the cockpit. So let's break off a control stick. We're only going to use one. If you were using the SR-71B, which is the trainer, you would put in both joysticks, one in the front and one in the back. We're not doing that here. So here we go. We are going to put in one chair and that joystick. You see those lines I was talking about where the chair sits down nice and even inside of there. It's also got little notches. This is the rear seat. Place that inside of there just like that. And I put in the control stick first, made it easier for me to do because, you know, small parts, hard to reach in. There are those notches I was talking about. These are on the front chair. They're exactly the same front and back. Just stick that in. There we go. If you were doing the SR-71B, there would be a block for the back chair, so it raises it up a little bit. This is the front half of the fuselage. Let's break this off of the sprues. We are going to put our cockpit in. It's got some spots right here for it. It fits nicely in place. I didn't have any troubles with that. This is the top half of that. We are going to put this down on that part of the fuselage. The model came in about 4 different sections that you had to do to make the whole fuselage complete. So we're going around the top part of this. Here is the bottom half. We're going to show you how that goes. And it fits together just like that. there are some gaps in there, so you need to make sure that you fill those in with putty to do a good job. This is the middle half, and I'm going to show you how this goes. It sits right on top like that. This is the nose cone, so we're going to have to put this together in 3 pieces. You see the top, side, and then this is the very front. Be careful. You don't want to break that piece. It is pretty thick, so it does take a lot to bend it and break it, which is a plus since it's a larger model. So as you can see, this is how that goes together, just a test fit. We are going to need to break some of the clear pieces off because they will go in. Those are for the spy cameras. Here are the spy glasses right here. Got to cut those off with the sprues too. It has its own little clear sprue, of course. Just be careful with them. There are 4 in here and then 1 that goes in the very front of the nose cone. Make sure you have something to hold them down. Otherwise, they go flying all over the place as well. So just cut each one of these out. Place it in. It goes only one way. So make sure you put it in properly. I'm using clear glue. Make sure the glue dries all the way because I had an issue where one of these pressed out and I had to find a way to get it back into the model. Not an easy task. It left a hole in the plastic. It's a cruel world for me. That's all I can say. So just make sure you get those in there. Try not to leave any smudges with your fingerprints because that happens to you. Otherwise you have to clean all that off. And I tend to rush things because I have no patience. So here we go. We're putting some glue on the front of the nose cone right here. Going to make sure that other piece was secure, which it was with the spyglass. You see it right there. Press that down. Don't put your finger on the glass because otherwise it might press in and then you're going to have issues. Here is the pitot tube, which goes right inside of there. On a lot of jets, that's actually painted silver, the very tip of that. If you've seen an SR-71, you would know what I'm talking about. It's not listed on the instructions, but it is silver. Here go along the edges. This is part of the fuselage. Stick that half on. And we are going to put the nose cone in place since that has dried thoroughly. Always let your pieces dry. You don't want to just stick everything in case there's some sort of mistake that you need to correct ahead of time. It's easier to do it while it's off. And you can see this only goes one way as well. That piece fit in fairly nicely. So we're going to make some titanium color for the wheels. It says to mix 18 drops of orange with silver. That's a Testors color because this was a Testors model. I did a little bit more than that because I wanted mine to be a really nice orange color, which it was. If you've ever seen an SR-71 under the wheels, they do have a really nice titanium color to them. So I simply mixed it up. Used my brush and all that stuff and used my little spinny thingy there that I have. Those always come in handy for mixing paint. So this is one of the wheel wells. We're going to put this color on the inside right there. When it dries, you can really see the hue. It comes out really nice in this. So here we go, just painting all of this. Do the front side, the back, the left, and the right of these. We have 2 of them to do. All wheel parts, they actually get this same color. So there we are doing the inside. This is for the wheel well too. It's on part of the fuselage on the bottom half. So you need to make sure you get this and just slowly go up with the brush. That's how I did mine. You want to put a couple coats on there. That way you get everything. This is the left side of that aircraft and the fuselage for the wheels for that. Here's the landing gear doors. Those also get the same color. As I said earlier, anything that's related with the landing gear and the wheel wells get this titanium type of color. It was needed for the plane because it got so hot in there while it was flying. These are the actuators for the doors. Those just went silver, I believe. I don't exactly remember, but hey, just paint them whatever color you want. It's not a big deal. So they're the actuators. You're going to have to trim some flashing. These are the rear doors right here. You're going to break those off into 2 pieces. They molded them as one. So once they're off of the sprues, you'll just take that line and etch a line with your hobby knife and just break those apart. These had some flashing on them, so you're going to have to get that off too. That's the only way they're going to go in, of course. So here we are. These are a couple more actuators that we have on the landing gear and some hinges. It had a lot, so because there were 2 doors per side. And here are the inlet spike bleeds. Those are also a titanium mix. This concludes part 1. Watch part 2. That's coming up. Subscribe to get that video. Don't forget, comments and likes are appreciated. See ya.